5 p.m. I would like to call to order the September 18th, 2019 regular meeting of the Minneapolis Park Board to order. Secretary Ringgold, would you please take the roll?
Commissioner Musich.
Present.
Commissioner Kogya.
Present.
Commissioner Severson.
Present.
Commissioner Meyer.
Present.
Commissioner French.
Here.
Commissioner Forney. Here. Vice President Dassan.
Here.
President Bourne.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda with the following change. We'll be removing on the advice of legal counsel, removing resolution 2019-312, a reconsideration of 2019-312. Is there a motion? It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor of the resolution as amended, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The motion carries. I would entertain a motion for the approval of the minutes of September 4th, 2019.
So moved.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on the minutes of September 4th? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The minutes are approved. Reports of officers, Superintendent Bangora.
Yeah, thank you, President Bourne and Commissioners. Welcome, everybody. It's good to see everyone. I'm going to begin with athletics, aquatics, and ice arenas. Youth sports. More than 350 youth tackle players have weighed in for the season. Adult sports, adult soccer, softball, kickball, and tennis are busy with more than 2,300 participants outside enjoying their sport. And in aquatics, fall lifeguard classes are opening on October 17th to the 19th, so we have a great opportunity for those that are interested in lifeguard classes. Please get enrolled on the 17th and 19th. Ice arenas. The Northeast Ice Arena has been converted from the spring-summer turf back to ice. New this season, with the help of the trades painters, and NPRB logo has been painted on the ice. Season begins September 16th. Recreation Center programs. Last week, the gym floors at Northeast Rec Center was refurnished. 2 sets of pickleball lines were added to accommodate this popular and rapidly growing sport at Northeast Rec Center. Fuller Rec Center has developed a Spanish-focused preschool and will begin offering in 2020. North Commons hosted the 7th annual Police Fire Barbecue from 12 to 4 o'clock p.m. They had a wonderful turnout with hundreds of attendance, free food, activities, and music. And I tell you, that was a really wonderful event, and I had great ribs, and it was a lot of fun. Wonderful event, and it was a pleasure to be a part of it. And I look forward to being a judge next year, so eating more ribs. Forestry. The Forestry Department, in partnership with the Tree Trust, is working on a tree planting project at Stewart Park. Students, volunteers from McAllister College planted 25 new trees as part of their sustainability initiative. The event took place over Labor Day weekend and was a great success despite the cold and the rain. Trays. We are 2 weeks into water shutoffs, and MPP 20 sidewalk replacement will be accelerating next week. Environmental management. So boat launch hours, starting on Monday, September 16th. The public boat launches at Bede-Makaska, Lake Harriet, and Lake Nokomis will be closing at 9 o'clock p.m. instead of 10 o'clock p.m. NPRB staff will continue to perform aquatic invasive species inspections of all watercraft and water-related equipment, and that enters and exits the lakes through the boat launches from 6 o'clock a.m. to 9 o'clock p.m., 7 days per week. NPRB staff have conducted 4,181 inspections and logged 15,850 customer service interactions from May 1st through September 9th in 2019. And wonderful work by all of our staff to be down at the lakes and really inspecting the boats. Wonderful work they did this year. Monarch Festival. The 11th annual Monarch Festival was a huge success and had an estimated 12,000 attendees, held at Lake Nokomis to celebrate the monarch migration to Mexico. The event has become a must-attend event for thousands of people Described on Facebook as the best festival in the galaxy, the event draws people from across Minnesota and neighboring states. That's a bold statement, but it is wonderful. So, mark your calendars for September 12th, 2020. Planning, Parade Park parking lot reconstruction. Oh, so happy to see this. The Parade Park parking lot reconstruction is underway and is anticipated to last for 6 to 8 more weeks. The project will completely reconstruct the 200-plus stall parking lot and is anticipated to be completed before winter when the park board hosts Hockey Day Minnesota adjacent to this newly reconstructed parking lot. So it couldn't have been more timely, so we're very excited to see the parking lot finally get done. Curry Park Phase 1 improvements. The Curry Park Phase 1 improvement project is set to begin construction any day now. The project will build a new splash pad, restroom buildings, and full-court basketball court. Construction will continue through the winter, with completion anticipated around July of 2020. Through social media and on-site signage, Curry Park users are being directed to nearby parks while the park gets the long overdue improvements. A construction celebration event has been scheduled for Monday, September 30th at 10 o'clock a.m. at Curry Park. On the same day at 4 o'clock p.m., NPRB staff will host a project information session for impacted park users to learn about the project, construction impacts, and nearby park facilities that remain available during construction. Fallball Park improvements. While there was a delay of the tennis courts and athletic field improvements at Fallball Park, the playground equipment is being replaced this fall. Playground construction has already begun and will complete before the winter. The tennis court and athletic field work will be re-scoped and planned construction in spring of 2020. Worth Chalet Water Intrusion Project. It was a loud start to last week of demolition of the concrete steps and patio pavers started on the north side of the Worth Chalet building. The loudest work should be over by now as the waterproofing, tuck pointing, and other work continues to seal up the area above the kitchen and storage. When the project is complete in October, it will be a much needed improvement to the kitchen at the Worth Chalet. It's a beautiful place. The Eloise Butler Wildflower Garden Project. There will be an open house to share community findings and concept design for the Eloise Butler Wildflower Garden visitor comfort improvements. NPRB staff will share community engagement results along with the proposed project concept design at the open house scheduled on Tuesday, October 8th from 5 to 7 o'clock p.m. at the Theodore Worth Pavilion, 3275 Glenwood Avenue. Light snacks will be provided at the family-friendly event, and we hope to see you there. Indigenous Public Arts Commission. So we're so excited. The Walker Arts Center has selected artist Angela Two Stars as the finalist for the Indigenous Public Art Commission. This is a special project in which a new work of public art is commissioned by the Walker, acquired for the collection, and cited in the Minneapolis Sculpture Garden in the fall of 2020. Our good friend Mary Cerruti is the executive director of the Walker Art Center, and she is here tonight to introduce a new installation of Indigenous public art. So, Mary, welcome. We're so glad to see you. If you want to just step up here, and
Thank you.
Great to see you.
Thank you, Superintendent Pangora, and I'm happy to be here. I'd start by saying that the unique public-private partnership between the Walker and the Park Board is really something that we value greatly, and it's very exciting. Some of you may remember that in just this past spring, in June, we unveiled the most recent commission, which was a project by Tacumba Aiken and Seitu Jones with Soyuni Guyton, and with her poetry, which was a continuation of the piece that they did at Nicollet Malls 20 years ago. So this is now the next commission by another Twin Cities-based artist that we're excited about. I thought I'd give you a little bit of background on how we got to this point and a little bit about the artist. So in the summer of 2017, after the sculpture scaffold was dismantled, there was mediation with the Dakota Elders. Among many things that was discussed and agreed to in that conversation, the Walker pledged to commission an artist to do new commission for the Walker campus, either in the Sculpture Garden or in the Wordle Upper Garden, which is the land where the Guthrie used to be, to the west of the Walker building. So we made, it was an open, and this was a first for the Walker also to do an open call. So normally our curators are actively seeking artists and identifying artists to work with. In this case, we did an open call, which was shaped by, in collaboration with the Indigenous Public Art Selection Committee. So we invited a group of 7 artists, curators, writers, and knowledge keepers to help us shape the call, to the scope of the project, and then to help share the call with the community. So Walker curators were out. We did 4 workshops ranging from, we went to Bemidji and the Watermark Arts Center and different places around. We did 5 workshops about the call to inform artists about how to apply. We got 50 proposals. And the call was issued in January. Proposals were due in June, I believe, early June, and late May, early June, I think. And which probably means I could go to the next slide, right? So this slide gives you the list of the participants. So this was the committee. We didn't announce the names of the committee at their request early on so that they wouldn't be lobbied by artists at the time. But now that the process is complete, we are releasing the names of who sat on that committee. We had a few people that participated early in the process and then stepped off the committee, and then people that came in to do the final selection with us. So I have to say it was a great experience for us. I think we all learned a lot. We relied a lot on the committee to share their knowledge of the language and the history and how these the stories and the metaphors that were being applied in this through the proposals, how how accurate they were, how they felt like they resonated with that community. So there were 7 members of the committee, Indigenous members of the committee, and then 3 Walker curators and I who reviewed all the proposals. We had over 50 proposals, which was very exciting, and it was super interesting to review them. In a meeting in June, in July, the committee met, we reviewed all 50 proposals and narrowed it to 3 finalists who we asked to further refine and elaborate their proposals. And of the 3 finalists, one was based in Boston, one was based in New Mexico, and one was based here in the Twin Cities. And although geographic location was not a criteria, we did end up selecting Angela Two Stars, who is based in St. Paul. The selection was made on August 9th. That was then sent to our acquisitions committee because this work will be acquired by the Walker as part of our permanent collection, and the acquisitions committee will approve the budget so we can move forward on paying artist fees and starting production on the work. So that happened at the end of August, and on Monday evening our board met and approved that budget and acquisition. So we're very excited that we were then able to announce the name of the finalists yesterday in the press. So the site, we have started a conversation with the park board about what site. I think I can say that Angela and we as curators have identified a site that is in the Minneapolis Sculpture Garden rather than the Wordle Upper Garden that we thought was the most appropriate for the piece. So we'll be continuing the logistics and viability of that site in conversation over the coming weeks, but the plan will be to sort of work out some of that. We're still working on the piece itself is the most important part. The piece itself is inspired by the idea of the significance of water, taking the idea that Minnesota is the Dakota word for the place where the land reflects the clouds or the sky. So the piece is the structure, the form of the piece is based on sort of the ripple effect of a drop of water. So there would be a central element with concentric rings that represent 7 sort of arcs that form circular sections from radiating out from a center that represent the 7 Sioux nations. It also represents a language journey. So there will be language elements that are embedded in these pieces, which are sort of a gathering space, almost a seating area, where it reflects the artist's journey to revitalize the Dakota language. So she's an artist who was born in South Dakota, lived in Michigan, has come back to the Twin Cities, and as a Dakota language learner, that's a big part of her sort of re-entering this place as her home and her community, and sort of and language itself for that community, and revitalizing that language is a big part of that healing process. So she sees this as a language journey that people will be able to enter the piece and sort of, whether they're a native speaker or a language learner, will be able to sort of enter the Dakota language through the piece. So that's a big part of it for her as well. So we're very excited. I think it's going to be a great, it's a very poetic metaphor for this relationship between land, language, and place, and we're super excited to move forward with it. And the plan is to move into production once we get sort of the site and some of the materials sorted out, and install the piece next fall. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Questions?
Thank you, Mary. Do folks have any questions for Mary? Well, then thank you so much for the update and for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Superintendent, is that the conclusion of your report of officers?
Yes, Mr. President Moore, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the superintendent and his report? Seeing none, we will move on to the consent agenda. I would entertain a motion for the approval of resolutions 2019-317 through 2019-327.
So moved.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on the consent agenda items? Seeing none, all those in favor of 2019-317 through 327, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, the consent agenda carries. Moving on to reports of committees, Chair Meyer.
On behalf of the Legislative and Intergovernmental Committee, I'll move Resolution 2019-310, a resolution authorizing the superintendent to submit in priority order 26th Avenue North River Access and Trail Connection, Waterworks Riverside Phase 2, I think I should say, Grand Rounds Missing Link implementation, and the North Commons Regional Vision, for a total of $31.55 million to the Minnesota Management and Budget for the 2020 Minnesota State Capital Budget.
2019-310 has been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Commissioner Meyer.
Thank you. So I had conversations with most of the commissioners about this. We do have pretty divergent priorities, it turns out, so it's going to be a challenge to put together a consensus ranking. I inquired if we could just submit our proposals without ranking them, but the Minnesota Management and Budget Office does require them to be ranked, and if the board doesn't, then staff is going to have to, so I don't want to put staff in that position. So we do have to rank them. I do have an amendment to propose that would add Bede-Mikoska Refectory, the reconstruction of that, for $2 million as our top priority. Back when we had previous discussions about this, it came up that the insurance costs that we're getting from the pavilion that burned down aren't going to be sufficient to cover all of that. And I was looking at other creative ways to fund that, including potentially reconstructing it with additional things on top of it to help cover those costs. There was a lot of pushback against that. So hearing that, this is an alternative way that we could reconstruct the pavilion without taking away capital resources elsewhere in the city. So I think that is a good thing for us to bring to the legislature because we have a clear case for it after the tragedy that happened, and I think that we can galvanize public support for that and have a successful project. That would be the only change that I would make to the ranking as we have right now. I feel the 26th Avenue North connection is a real linchpin, a critical project. I'm excited to see the progress at Waterworks, and want to make sure that we maintain our relationship with the Parks Foundation and the sponsors that have helped us get so far. The Grand Rounds missing link is a really high priority for me. That would fully complete the Grand Rounds, the vision that we've been trying to accomplish for over 100 years. So I really want to keep that in there. I do have some skepticism about the North Commons provision because I would prefer to see some greater community support, and I'm not sure we're ready for it, but as part of a compromise, I'm okay with keeping it in there. So that would be my submission. Other commissioners can propose amendments to that, but so I would propose to amend this to read, it would basically insert the language reconstruction of Bidet McCoska Refectory at $2 million at the start, after the words priority order.
Thank you, Commissioner Meyer. There is an amendment on the floor. Is there a second on the amendment?
Second.
There's been a second. There's been a motion or an amendment and a second. Is there discussion on the amendment? Commissioner, I lost the sequence, but Commissioner Severson followed by Forney on the amendment.
Thank you, President Bourne. This is a hard compromise for me because this puts two projects that we're really fighting for on the north side. This puts them behind them, and far too often we're not getting enough done on the north side, as we can see with the youth violence that continues and the other issues that we continue to have. So I will not be supporting this today.
Thank you, Commissioner Severson. Commissioner Forney to the amendment.
Thank you. First of all, I'd just like to have a reminder of what has been added from last year on this agenda.
I would look to Director Arvidsson to give us a little bit of a history lesson from last year. Mr. Arvidsson.
President Bourne, Commissioner Forney, last year the projects that were, it's actually kind of 2 years ago was the most recent normal bonding cycle.
Thank you, that's true.
But the last time we submitted under this process, the submissions were for Upper Harbor Terminal, which was our top priority, and that was funded, so it's no longer on the list. We did submit for a project that we called Mississippi River Habitat Enhancement and Public Water Access. And I did not recommend that coming forward because we are pursuing LCCMR funding for a similar project. We did submit the 26th Avenue and the Waterworks and the Grand Rounds missing link previously. So on the list that's before you as written, the new project is really the North Commons project. And then obviously the Bidet McCoska Refectory, as proposed just now, would be another new project.
Thank you, Mr. Arvidsson. Commissioner Forney.
Yes, thank you for the reminder. I truly believe that the refectory, I don't think it's called a pavilion, but we keep on mixing the names, but I'm going to call it a refectory. It definitely is something that's very important. I'm just questioning whether or not this is the appropriate time to put it on, being that we truly do need to engage the community as to what they want, and I don't believe that that's been teed up even. I do feel it's a high priority, but I feel that this might be premature. The North Commons, I believe, yes, those are strong interests. I'm not saying that they aren't, but I just really strongly hesitate loading up this agenda. And it's my understanding is that other governmental agencies put one, maybe two. And how many do we have here? Is that 5? If we add the refectory to it. So I just feel that, are we setting ourselves up by failure by asking for so much? Does it dilute what truly is our priority? And I think that's what's being asked. What is our priority? And I'm not saying that the other things aren't important. It's a matter that we're being asked, what truly is our priority? Where do we want the push? And I'm hesitant to have the refectory on at this point in time. I feel it's premature, because citizen engagement to me is so key, particularly something that is, in everybody's backyard. I mean, the refectory is everybody's backyard, and we haven't even teed that up. That could take, as much as a couple of years before we are able to do that. So I would not vote in favor of adding, and if anything, I would be subtracting, would be what I'd be inclined for. So less is more in these situations.
Thank you, Commissioner Forney. Commissioner Cogill to the amendment, followed by Meyer.
Thank you, President Bourne. This potential amendment being in my district, I'm supportive of it. This is kind of an unprecedented scenario that we're in, and I think that at the fulcrum point of the busiest regional park space in the entire state, it warrants us to consider this tonight, and I hope my colleagues support it, but I'm completely sympathetic to Commissioner Severson's thoughts about prioritizing areas that have consistently been overlooked, namely the north side. And I certainly, if Commissioner Forney had a suggestion for a single or couple of priorities, I think that would be well received and entertained by me. Right now on this amendment, though, I'm going to support rebuilding the major space in the middle of my district.
Thank you, Commissioner Cogill. Commissioner Meyer.
So next year is the bonding bill. Usually the legislature does their bonding bill on the even years. Like sometimes they do have a supplementary one on the odd years, but the big one is usually in the even year. So this is really our only chance to get bonding funds for this project. If we were to delay and they didn't have a bonding bill in 2021, maybe 2022, and I certainly hope that we have this reconstructed by then. I fully agree that we need, a lot of public engagement on this. This doesn't preclude any of that; it just funds it. And the legislature wouldn't be acting on this until the spring, so and that gives us time to get that in order. But I do think we should act on it now when we have the chance. I also just want to mention, what really matters is our ability to persuade legislators. So what's really going to be consequential is the type of work that we as commissioners do, getting community support. This action here is really mostly a symbolic procedural thing that we submit to the Minnesota Management and Budget Office.
Thank you, Commissioner Meyer. Before going to Commissioner Forney, okay. I have a couple of comments, but I just wanted to recognize Lobbyist Rice to see if he has any insight on the list or the potential. There's a question as to the number of projects that are on the list. Lobbyist Rice.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You've given me 1 minute since we're at 5:29. I think that, I understand the circumstance with the loss of the refractory at Bede-Makaska. I do think the commissioners, as they consider this, should also weigh that. My advice generally has been to pick a priority, stay with it, get it on the list, let it work its way up, and try to get it funded. The other thing I'd add to it, we will be lobbying on other things. The city will be coming forward with an Upper Harbor Terminal request for an additional $2 million, I believe. And while it's not our request, we've generally been very supportive of that. And we will also have a $15 million, hopefully, Metropolitan Parks and Open Space request. So you'll be asking a lot of your lobbying team already. There's probably another $17 million not disclosed on this list that we're going to be asking for. So I think that as you consider all these things, you'll give it a lot of thought over the next 15 minutes with open time.
Thank you, Lobbyist Rice. That said, we are moving into open time, so we're going to pause our current action. Every park board meeting, we have at a certain time, we have a point on our agenda that we call open time, which is our community's opportunity to petition the board or give the board any information that they feel is important for the board to receive. We have 12 speakers. Open time is contained to a total of 15 minutes. I'm going to give every speaker 90 seconds, so we will be going a little bit over that 15 minutes. There's just a couple of items and reminders I like to make folks aware of before open time. You may have some direct questions of the board. This is not a time that the board engages in debate or conversation. We're just here to listen. So if you have a very specific question about what time does a rec center close, we may refer you to somebody on staff in the audience. And there's just 2 items that we ask that we do not hear at open time, and those are pending litigation and personnel issues. If folks have any questions, comments, or concerns on those, we want to hear those, but the most appropriate way, considering the sensitive nature of some of the folks that may be involved in those, that they reach out to commissioners or our executive staff directly, and all of our contact information can be found on minneapolisparks.org. So that said, I have 12 speakers signed up for open time. My first speaker is Al Flowers. Al, if you could come forward, and if you're comfortable, state your name, and if you're comfortable, your address for the public record. You have 90 seconds, and welcome.
Yeah, Al Flowers, 31st in Chicago. I just came to, I'm speaking up. First, let me thank Commissioner Hassan, Commissioner French, and Commissioner Stevenson for all they do, trying to make sure that we're okay with our youth and trying to bring 1.5 million into recreation for the youth. But at the same time, I agree with Commissioner Fortney. We can't sacrifice some of the safety for this, and I would ask the Chair Warren, let's figure out a way to make this happen, make their request happen without putting more danger in our community. As an African American descendant of the slave, like I always say, we always got to pick. We always got to pick, and it hurts us sometimes. Everything the 2 commissioners, French and Hassan, said is absolutely right. We need that rec money, but I figure it's better ways, it's other ways that you can do this without having a big fight. I don't like our community to continue being a fight to see we do this, or if we do this, we got to slash the police. If we don't do it, then we can't get the recreation that y'all did a great job with this year. So I don't like being in the middle of that, because I know we need that safety issue there too. Just seeing some of the things was happening at the park. So I'm agreeing with 4 of the commissioners at one time that we need that safety. It's a big deal to me that you don't take something away from us to give us something. Why we can't have safety on both sides and the rec. So think about that, commissioners, before we get into the big fight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Flowers. Our next speaker is Adam Swerzik. Adam, if you would state your name, and if you're comfortable, your address for the public record, and you have 90 seconds, and welcome.
All right. I'm Adam Swerzik. I'm a police sergeant and Federation rep, an 18-year employee with the Park Police. First of all, I agree with Al Flowers, and I'm probably not going to say that very often. I am here to speak against Commissioner French's public threat to withhold $1.5 million from the Park Police budget. I'm here to speak about the people of the Park Police Department, and I want to make it clear, we aren't a bunch of pawns that are to be manipulated for the gain. These are people that work in high-stress situations that suddenly must deal with the increased stress about whether or not they have a job or their coworkers have a job in the future. These are educated, trained, caring people who want to be Park Police employees. Like myself, they like the park, they love the park system, and they take pride in what they do. A couple examples here. Take Officer Andrew Heinen, for example. Married, has a newborn son, 5 months old, born with such a severe medical problem that he still hasn't been released from the neonatal ICU. Yet, Officer Heinen comes to work daily, ready to risk his life in service to this park system. In 2017, Officer Heinen and Park Officer Lynette Unke were nearby on the Parkway when Minnehaha Academy exploded. Both officers went into the unstable building, risking their lives, ready to help those in need. More recently, in July, Officer Heinen was instrumental in saving the life of a gentleman who had a cardiac incident at Boom Island. That's just one of a number of life-saving events that Park Police have participated in this last year. Sergeant Katie Cannon started as a lifeguard, then became a park agent, and was later promoted to park officer. She almost made the ultimate sacrifice in August of 2012 when she was brutally attacked and stabbed. She has successfully overcome that incident and continues to provide excellent service and dedication to this organization. Commissioner French, please don't ever forget that my fellow Minneapolis Park Police employees have sacrificed, risked it all, and given more to this organization than you ever possibly could, and they deserve to be treated better. Thank you.
Thank you, Officer Swarzak. Our next speaker is Dot Belster. Dot, are you here this evening? Dot, if you can come forward, state your name, and if you're comfortable, your address for the public record. You have 90 seconds to address the board, and welcome.
So I'm Dot Belsler. I'm the Executive Director of Twin Cities Pride, one of the largest events in the city. I was just informed by a private citizen that you guys are looking at banning single-use bottles in park events. I totally understand. We have tried to cut down on all of the bottles that we use. I understand how bad it is for the world. We sell, I think we're able to control, right now we sell pop in 20-ounce bottles. We're able to control that by doing cans. We also, I just don't know what we're going to do about the water. You know, we have free water at each of the pop stands. We spend a few $1,000s bringing in water jug, premium water cooler things that people can refill their bottles. I just don't know, and we sell bottles, but I just don't know how we're going to do the water. We do use the Minneapolis tap on two of the corners of Loring Park, one on Maple and one on Yale, and we use them on the parade route. But we just I don't have enough water to make sure that 50,000, 60,000 people can have something to drink. And my last plug is for the police department. Oh my God, these guys are the best. We work with them. There's so many people in this room that I've worked with over the last 10 years. Yeah, okay, that's all I have.
Thank you, Dot.
We are recycling 7 tons this year. It's 60% of our waste.
Thank you, Dot. Our next speaker is Diane Moe. Diane, if you would come forward, state your name, and if you're comfortable, your address for the public record. You have 90 seconds, and welcome.
President, Board, and Park Commissioners, my name is Diane Moe. I live in South Minneapolis on 49th and Park, and I've also been a Park Board employee since 1990. There were 10 years when I left. I'm here to speak on for keeping the park police and not making any cuts. This was a challenging summer. We were short 5 to 6 police officers, and we really missed them in the recreation centers. When I left for 10 years, I went to Bloomington, and when I came back, I was at Loring Park. And a lot of the people in Bloomington thought it was crazy to go back to downtown Minneapolis. I called and talked to Lieutenant Goodsell, who at the time said, "It's a great park, you'll love it, and we have your back." These officers have our back. If we lose the park police, we get the city police. And God love them, but they're totally different. They come in with a different focus and a different agenda. And I would encourage any of you, if you haven't seen the difference in who comes, come out to one of our rec centers and see how they do. Having our park police in our system, I think, is one of the huge reasons that we've had, that we've been given the Trust for Public Land since every year in the nation. Best public park in the nation since 2013. So please consider it and don't make any cuts to the park police. If anything, expand them. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. Our next speaker is Abu Amara. Abu, if you would state your name and if you're comfortable, your address for the public record. You have 90 seconds, and welcome.
Thank you, Commissioners. My name is Abu Amara, 8th and Portland. I'm here to speak on behalf of a coalition of labor, communities of color, small business owners, and of industry, and specifically to the single-use ban proposal. This proposal, as it currently stands, would take money out of the pockets of black and brown businesses. That is a fact. We have offered an amendment. Each of you has received that from me in hopes that you would consider thinking about the impact that this is going to have. Because environmental justice cannot be about punishing black and brown small business owners to pay for the environmental justice. We want to be a part of the solution. We think that there's a laudable goal here, but as it's proposed does not solve the problem. Each of you have the amendment that I proposed, so we hope that one of you will offer that as part of the considerations here today. And the last thing I'll end with is just thinking about the enforcement. How will this be enforced? Imagine a scenario, a park event, where you have two food trucks, one of which meets the threshold, one of which does not. How are you going to enforce it? You must have plastic police if you want to be able to enforce that, or else you're just passing a resolution that is unenforceable. And we don't think we should have more laws on the books that are not enforceable, that could facilitate bad interactions between community and residents. And so therefore, we ask again that this board amend the resolution based on the language to create a narrow exemption that will ensure that folks within the parks will continue to experience it the way they historically have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Abu. Our next speaker is, the last name is Ricks. I think it might be Jason. Is there a Jason Ricks or a... James Ricks. Welcome, James. If you would state your name and if you're comfortable, your address for the public record. You have 90 seconds and welcome.
James Ricks, Maple Grove, Minnesota. I picked the paper up on the 16th. It's about the tax levy. I know you're elected officials because I vote, and I found out usually just one usually on the ballot. But I don't agree with the tax levy. I agree that we need the park police. Number one, they're more important than youth programs, somewhat. You need to work with the nonprofit churches and organizations, Teen Challenge and Thriving Financial. Also work with youth organizations outside of the city and the state and the county, and work and organize programs to help the youth. Not just be the front runner and work with them to make sure you got a community progress going on. You should raise taxes based on homeowners' property. 75% of homeowners pay taxes now. And I agree with what the mayor said. Once you get that money, you can do whatever you want to do with it. So when you go to the poll, I don't know how long your position is, but I do vote. And hopefully these people are aware that your seats do come up for elections. So it's not a permanent position. You're not guaranteed this office once you run again if somebody's running against you. So the people here need the park police. Don't cut them based on your youth agenda when you can work with other organizations to come up with ways to keep the youth going in the community and have activities with them outside of the county with churches, organizations. Like I say, there are programs out there to work with them. And I thank you for my time.
Thank you, Mr. Ricks. Our next speaker is Keith Olson. Keith, if you can come forward, state your name, and if you're comfortable, your address for the public record. You have 90 seconds to address the board, and welcome.
Good evening, Keith Olson. I live in the Minneapolis neighborhood. Been here all my life, 60 years. And I've worked for you a third of my life, and I'm still here. I grew up in these parks. I believe they're safe. I'll ride a bike. I'll do anything anywhere in the city. But it's because of the park police. I've watched them forge relations with the recreation staff. But as a park keeper, they're our back. We're the eyes and ears. Today I had people in my parking lot when I came to work. But they're our eyes and ears. What are we going to deal with? If we can't call them and feel safe, where are we going with this? I mean, we're reporting the things, they're dealing with them, but we need them. We need to have them out there. And, you know, as far as I'm concerned, quit using the kids as a pawn. We can look at your budget and find other ways to save money instead of saying it's about the kids, about the kids. We can look at management and whatever you want to look at, and I'm willing to sit down, and we can find ways to save that money. But we need the park police, and we don't have enough as it is, because a lot of crime happens at the middle of the night. And then city cops don't know a lot of the rules. I've come across it many times. But we need the park police. We cannot afford to go shorter than we've been. We need every one of them out there. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Olson. Next speaker is Joel Tamburino. Joe Tamburino. Joe, if you'd state your name and if you're comfortable, your address for the public record, you have 90 seconds and welcome.
Good evening, Commissioners. Joe Tamburino. I'm a downtown resident. I'm in Commissioner Cowgill's district. I live downtown on Portland and 2nd. I'm also the chair of the Downtown Minneapolis Neighborhood Association and a member of the Hennepin Avenue Safety Committee. I'm here to speak against any cuts to the police department for a number of reasons, but the major reason is that this park board has rightly invested and will invest even more in so many great developments. You're going to be taking over the Commons. You have Waterworks, which is literally 2 blocks from where I live. You might have the amphitheater at the Upper Harbor Terminal, many, many developments. And with those developments, we also have to have a commitment to public safety. And a commitment to public safety does not mean that you're going to take away resources from the police. There's only 35 officers here in this department for what, about 180 parks, 7,000 acres of park land. And they don't even have the ability to do 24-hour surveillance. I mean, think, Lola's was mentioned tonight, hundreds of thousands of dollars. That burned down by negligent acts at approximately 3:30 a.m. Imagine if we had police to be able to go 24/7 to go through some of our populated park areas or very well-known areas so people could patrol. So we should not be cutting the police. Also, every once in a while you hear about, well, should the park police be folded into Minneapolis Police Department? Absolutely not. For 130 years, this has been a separate parks department, and we should keep it that way. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tamburino. My next speaker is Kay Starla Kraus. Is that Kay Starla? If you would state your name and if you're comfortable, your address for the public record, you have 90 seconds and welcome.
Thank you. My name is Starla Krause at 2300 Victory Memorial Parkway. And I just came today to thank the park board and the commissioners for a wonderful season at Weber Natural Pool. My sister Robin and I enjoyed the pool almost daily with daily swims at the pool. We celebrated the pool being open every day, and we were informed on Memorial Weekend about the UV system installed. So we celebrate that and thank you. We celebrated daily our beautiful global village that enjoyed this pool, and we really appreciated the dedicated staffing, the lifeguards so attentive, caring, the front end managed by James and Rhonda. It was all really, really good, and it was a great summer. We can't wait till next summer, so thank you.
Thank you, Starla. The next speaker I have is Tony Kelly. Tony, if you would state your name and if you're comfortable, your address for the public record, you have 90 seconds and welcome.
Thank you, President Bourne and Commissioners. My name is Tony Kelly. I live at Chestnut and Queen in Minneapolis, and I'd like to speak in favor of the tax levy and against the politics of scarcity. We can and we must support strong youth programs, and we can and must support public safety. As Local 363's newest business manager, I'd like to extend an invitation into the conversation to help support these things. I think we can work very strongly together. I stand with my brothers and sisters in the Federation and AFSCME, who represent the park agents, because I think their jobs are important, as anybody's are. So we stand in support of that, and also with labor's values of supporting our youth. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Our next speaker is Ed Reynoso. Ed, if you would state your name and if you're comfortable, your address for the public record, you have 90 seconds and welcome.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the committee, commissioners. My name is Edward Reynoso. I'm the political director for the Teamsters Union. We represent in excess of 62,000 active and retired members in the state of Minnesota, thousands of them within the city limits of Minneapolis. Thousands of them, they use our park system. I'm hoping I have the opportunity to really bring to light the full impact of what the single-use ban proposal could do to Teamster jobs. We have about 850 members within the industry of bottling and delivery of pop, Coca-Cola, and Pepsi. We believe that putting this ban into effect would cost hundreds of jobs throughout the area. We understand, completely understand the goal and respect your goal of trying to eliminate some of the carbon footprint. But I think it would be great to be able to have an opportunity to sit down with you guys and understand with the rest of the stakeholders what the full impact of this could be to jobs in the city. You know, I always say the best way out of poverty is a good union job. And while we have a hard time finding good union jobs these days, to lose them because of this without full input from stakeholders, I'm asking that you consider tabling or consider postponing this vote and engage with the rest of the stakeholders, especially us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reynoso. Our next speaker is Judy Long. Judy, are you here this evening?
But I'm going to pass.
Okay. Thank you, Judy. That is is there anybody that signed up for open time whose name I did not call? I think I got everybody on my list. Okay, so we are closing open time. We do have a 5:45 time certain public hearing on resolutions on a revision of our code of ordinances to correct some typographical errors in resolutions PB 2-34 and PB 10-25. I have nobody signed up on my list to come to speak about those typographical errors. Is there anybody here that is interested in speaking on, that feels really strongly about preserving those typographical errors? Is there anybody here to speak on that item on the agenda? The public hearing is opened and the public hearing is closed. Moving along, we are back at Resolution 2019-310. There is an amendment on the floor to include the Bidet-McCoska refectory in the top priority spot at $2 million. I had lost track of speakers at that point. Were there folks that wanted to speak to the amendment? We had just heard from Council Rice. I believe that everybody had spoken. Is there anybody else that wants to add anything to the amendment? Before we go to the main motion to the amendment, I'm aware of adding a bigger list might impact the quality of the totality of our asks. Given the nature of, and agreeing with Commissioner Cogill and Commissioner Meyer, one of the most heavily used and visited spots in the city of Minneapolis, having befallen a tragedy and a fire, I don't think that there is a project that we have that would have greater appeal at the legislature right now. It's something that everybody can look at and say, hey, there was a fire here, let's all pitch in and help rebuild. I think President FDR said something to the effect that when your neighbor's house is on fire, you lend them a hose. And I think that that's a pretty compelling argument at the legislature. And so I would include I would be supportive, and I want to thank Commissioner Meyer for bringing that amendment forward. Is there any further discussion on amending Resolution 2019-310 to include Bidet-McCoska refectory reconstruction in the top position? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of amending Resolution 2019-310, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
I am counting. I'm going to ask for a roll call.
Commissioner Musich.
No.
Commissioner Cogill.
Aye.
Commissioner Severson.
No.
Commissioner Meyer.
Aye.
Commissioner French.
No.
Commissioner Forney.
No.
Vice President Hassan.
No.
President Bourne.
Aye.
You have 3 ayes, 5 nays, 1 absent.
The resolution on the amendment fails. We're back to the main motion. Is there any further discussion on the main motion? Commissioner Musich.
Thank you, President Bourne. My understanding of bonding requests is that they need to be regional assets, and one of the items we have on the list is the North Commons Regional Vision. And since that's part of the North Service Area Master Plan, my understanding is that that is a neighborhood park and not a regional park. So if staff could help me understand how we can make the case that this is a regional asset when we don't classify it as such, I would appreciate it.
Mr. Robertson.
President Bourne, Commissioner Musich. It's true that this is a regional park, it's a neighborhood park, classified as a neighborhood park, and it is not always typical that we would submit a state bond request for a project in a neighborhood park. However, I brought this forward as a possibility in our board discussion a month and a half or so ago because the vision for this particular site would make it regional in nature. The idea is that the new plan for North Commons Park with what would become one of the more premier athletic facilities, recreation centers, and aquatic facilities in our entire system could attract from across the north side and actually across the region for especially tournaments and gatherings and things like that. I will admit that it's not as clear a sell to the legislature as some of our strictly regional projects are. However, I do think that the project as envisioned moves us toward a more regionally oriented facility, even though it happens to be in a neighborhood park. And that's why it was brought forward as a possibility. And during that discussion with the board, it seemed to be well supported. And so that's why I had included it in the recommended list.
Okay, so if we were to receive these funds, would we consider reclassifying this park as a regional asset rather than including it in the neighborhood park portfolio, since it would be functioning indeed as a regional park in the area?
President Bourne, Commissioner Musich, we would not likely reclassify this park as a regional park because the Met Council gets involved in that decision, and there are certain acreage requirements, and regional parks by definition have to have a natural resource focus. So it would probably be impossible for us to classify this as a regional park. I think a different way of thinking of it is that we do have neighborhood assets being non-regional assets by classification that do have a significant regional draw, such as some of our larger athletic fields like Boston Field and even Bryn Mawr, and also the Sculpture Garden is technically within a neighborhood park and not a regional park.
Okay, and have we ever successfully received state bonding money for a neighborhood park within the city of Minneapolis?
President Bourne, Commissioner Musich, the Sculpture Garden did receive bonding money. Though it's hard to think of that as a neighborhood park, strictly speaking, it actually is not a regional park. And so therefore it defaults to the neighborhood category within our system.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Commissioner Musich. Commissioner Severson.
Thank you, President Bourne. I just want folks to know that our state senator, Bobby Joel, champion, and our two representatives, Cooley and Ray Dean, are ready to champion this. But could Council Rice give us a little more feedback on this?
Sure.
Council, our lobbyist Rice.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think Mr. Arvidsson, I think Commissioner Musich asked the correct questions, and Director Arvidsson answered them correctly. I would add, in addition to that inquiry about have we received funds for what in our system is considered a neighborhood park with state dollars, and I think the answer, in addition to the Sculpture Garden, would be East Phillips Park, the building there off of 24th and Cedar, and additionally the Phillips communities
Aquatic Center.
The swimming pool. I'm sure I could think of one or two others. So I think Adam gave the best answer. It kind of all depends. I think if it's styled correctly and there's political support for it and it actually has a regional draw, there are a number of examples where the legislature as a whole is invested in what might be considered just strictly a local asset. It depends. It's happened in our community, and it's happened in St. Paul too. So it can happen.
Thank you.
It takes extra effort, but it can be done.
Thank you, lobbyist Rice. Commissioner Severson, does that conclude your comments?
Thank you.
Is there any other discussion on 2019-310? Commissioner Forney.
I'm torn by all this, I really am. There's just a strong part of me that wants to really focus on just a couple of items, make those our priority, focus on those, and be successful. And so I would just advocate for the top two, or that they're listed right now, 26th Avenue North, river access and trail connection, and the Waterworks Riverside. It's not a matter that I don't have interest or concern in the other two items. It's just I feel that there is we dilute things, and I'm very there's a lot of contradiction that's going inside of me as a result of this. So I just would like to put that forward, that focusing on those top two. I mean, Commissioner Cowgill wanted to know where I stood, and that's where I stand as far as priorities.
Thank you, Commissioner Forney. Is there any other discussion? Commissioner Severson for the second time.
Thank you, President Bourne. Would anyone like to enlighten us on what they think we should remove off of this list?
Thank you, Commissioner Severson. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor of 2019-310, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Abstentions? There is one. The motion carries with one vote in opposition. Moving on to the I'm going to take a pause there. We have a time-certain 6 p.m. public hearing on a repealing specific ordinances of the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board that are superseded by Minnesota state law. That's an action that's coming up on our agenda in a couple of minutes. Again, I have a public hearing list with 0 people signed up to speak. Is there anyone here that would like to speak during this public hearing? Is there is there anyone? Can I see hands if there's anybody that wants to speak? I see somebody moving a little bit. Sir, I don't have your name on the list, but if you can come, you're welcome to speak during a public hearing. If you can come forward, state your name and address if you're comfortable for the public record. You have, hello. And you have 90 seconds to address the board, and welcome.
Okay, well, thanks a lot. My name, I'm going to have to beg a little bit of indulgence. My name's Dave Alderson. I was prompted to stop down here and sit in. I'm with the Cedar Riverside Neighborhood Revitalization Program. I'm a resident of Northeast Minneapolis, but I've been working on the West Bank for 30-some years. And just give me a 10-second synopsis of what we're talking about, because I just walked in the room and I didn't get any information.
We are right now, we have a public hearing on the revision of the Code of Ordinances.
Okay.
You have 90 seconds during a public hearing to address the board on anything you want under that 90 seconds. The time is
revision
yours.
of public ordinances. Well, I mean, I came down here as a representative of the Cedar Riverside neighborhood to see what's going on. I apologize for my ignorance, but I do confess it at the same time. We're in the midst of, a lot of issues in our community. We have a lot of challenges for young people, and so anything that we can do to provide additional programming, anything we can do to take heat off of young people who have insufficient infrastructure, insufficient community resources to deal with their recreational and educational needs. That's where I'm coming from, and I came down tonight, like I say, just to put in an appearance and be a voice on behalf of the community and say that we're, particularly interested in anything that might revolve around an expansion of Brian Coyle Center in cooperation with the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board.
Thank you, Mr. Alderson. Is there anybody else that was intending to speak during the public hearing? Seeing none, I am closing the public hearing on the repeal of the ordinances that are superseded by Minnesota state law. Moving back to the full board and reports of the Administration and Finance Committee, Vice Chair Cogill.
Thank you, President Bourne. On behalf of the Administration and Finance Committee, I'll move Resolution 2019-292, first reading of resolution amending ordinances PB 2-34 and PB 10-25 of the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board Code of Ordinances to correct typographical errors.
The resolution has been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
The resolution has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion during the first reading? Seeing none, I need a piece of advice again from both of our parliamentarians. This is the first reading. If I recall correctly, we're not taking an actual vote tonight, correct? Mr. Chair. Thank you, Parliamentarian Rice. Is there any discussion on the first reading at 2019-292? Seeing none, this resolution is held over. Vice Chair Cogill.
On behalf of the Administration and Finance Committee, I'll move Resolution 2019-293, first reading of resolution repealing specific ordinances of the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board Code of Ordinances that are superseded by Minnesota state law.
2019-293 for the first reading has been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on 2019-293 during the first reading? Seeing none, that resolution is held over. Vice Chair Kogel.
Thank you, President Bourne. On behalf of the Administration and Finance Committee, I'll move Resolution 2019-313, a resolution suspending board naming procedures and approving the renaming of Carl W. Croning Interpretive Center to become the Carl W. Croning Nature Center and to be commonly known as the Croning Nature Center.
2019-313 has been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
2019-313 has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Commissioner Forney.
Thank you. I am totally supportive of the renaming. I like it. It's a wonderful branding. My concern is the procedure. The fact that we are suspending the rules. Our procedure is very specific, and too often we are suspending the rules. And what I would very, very much like, see, the naming and renaming of a park or facility should not be undertaken lightly or for political or frivolous motivations. This I do not believe is political or a frivolous motivation, but the fact that we are suspending the rules, the procedure, I find very bothersome, and I would like to direct staff to look at our procedures, and is it more a situation that we should change the procedures instead of constantly suspending the rules. That is why I will be voting against this, but it's not because I don't believe that it should be renamed that. But we have two other items that have come before us asking for renaming. One of them is naming and the other one is renaming. One is for the Gorge and one is for the Central Riverfront. And these are things that actually came out of community engagement. And so therefore, I just question whether or not should we be changing our procedures instead of suspending procedures.
Thank you, Commissioner Forney. Commissioner Musich.
Thank you, President Bourne. I really appreciate you bringing this up, Commissioner Forney, that the need to reassess our naming procedure and policy. Every single name change that this board has undertaken has suspended our rules and not involve the public in the decision making. So I believe very strongly in community engagement. We do that as part of every other planning effort that we undertake as an institution, and we really ought to be doing it with naming as well. So I would ask that we have a study report item in the planning committee to discuss how we as a board want to move forward in a way that doesn't require the suspension of rules and the ignoring of policy to change names within the system. I too will not be able to support this motion. Thank you.
Commissioner Severson.
Can I just get a point of clarification that we're not following policy? Part of the policy is being able to suspend the rules, correct? Council?
Mr. President.
Council Rice.
Commissioner Severson, if your question is, can the board suspend the policy, the answer would be yes. It takes 2/3 votes to do that, however. The question is, well, we have a board policy that you ordinarily follow, but it can be suspended, but only on a 2/3 vote.
Thank you. Thank you, Council Rice. Is there any further discussion? Commissioner Kogel.
I'm certainly supportive of the idea of continuing to be consistent in our policies and procedures. I understand that. I hear the concept of around engagement, community engagement. I also am kind of interested in not wasting the public's time on frivolous renamings, or not frivolous renamings, but kind of inconsequential renamings. I mean, we're moving one interpretive to nature center. I don't see why we would waste the public's time with that. I'm just going to go out on a limb and say that there's not going to be a lot of pushback on this one. And so I don't think that it makes sense in this situation to harp on it.
Thank you, Commissioner Cogill, Commissioner Meyer.
Thank you. I don't sit on the administrative committee, and when I read through this, it seemed so insignificant to change it from the Croning Interpretive Center to the Croning Nature Center that I didn't ask any questions about it. But can I ask, like, whose initiative? What was this? Why is someone proposing to change it from Interpretive Center to Nature Center?
Thank you, Commissioner Meyer. I'll invite Assistant Superintendent Barrick up and to address your question.
President, Board, Commissioners, this was a staff initiative based on programming at the site. So we've learned over the years in advertising the Cronig Interpretive Center, there's a lot of confusion around that. So changing it to Nature Center is a more clear representation of what happens there. So that's the intent.
Thank you for that. That's really all I need. I mean, I don't feel like it's worth taking up more of public time and our time to have a study report, so I will vote in favor of this today.
Thank you, Commissioner Meyer. Commissioner Forney for the second time.
Thank you. Just to re-clarify, I am totally fine with the renaming. I'm very serious. Okay, it is the suspension, and I'm not asking to study this particular resolution, but to study whether or not our procedures should be looked at. I gave 2 points, and that was about the gorge and the Central Riverfront. Both of those had extensive citizen engagement. I'm not at all encouraging that we could do further communication on that, but it's about procedure and whether or not should we be questioning whether this is how we want our procedure. If we are always going to be suspending the rules, then let's change the procedure. It's a very simple question to ask staff to look at that.
Thank you, Commissioner Forney. Is there any further discussion on 2019-313? I do have a question for the expert on our policy, which I think is Deputy Superintendent Ringgold. Can you walk through what the procedure would be at this point and what would be the most expedited way that best possible speed if we followed our procedure? When can we make this administrative change?
President Bourne, Commissioners, I actually have a copy of the procedures here. I can hand those out to you. If we were to think of this as a facility that's nominated, it's not an individual, so we don't have the 2-year component to it because it's not being named after an individual. But if it's being nominated for a renaming, what we would look at is holding 2 public hearings. The first public hearing would have to happen within the first 6 months of the nomination, and the second public hearing would have to happen within 2 months of it coming to the board. And in both of those cases, it shouldn't happen more than 2 years after the original nomination. I think those would be kind of the key points about it. There's some additional language in the procedure that talks about these public hearings happening in the community, and then the members who need to be at the meetings in order for them to be valid in terms of commissioners being there. So if the correct people aren't there, then the public hearing is invalid and needs to be reheld. So at this point, it would be putting together the public hearings, making sure the appropriate individuals are there. The first one would have to be within 6 months of the nomination, and the second one within 2 months of it coming to the board.
Can you talk about, so on an administrative change, the longest this would take would be 8 months. Can you talk to me a little bit about is the policy clear on what entering something into nomination is?
President Bourne, Commissioners, so the procedure for nominating a facility or a park name is as follows. The dated written nomination should identify a person or organization submitting the nomination, as well as several means of contact for that individual. The nomination should identify the park site, center, shelter, or special facility to be named or renamed, And then the nomination should document the significant enduring contributions made to the park system, this is in the case if it's a person, by the person after whom which the park facility is to be named. So in this case, it's not being named after a person, so that 1C item would not be applicable.
Okay. And then I'm not sure if this resolution is written. I could see the argument that it could be interpreted as a nomination, but I'm not sure if it would be. I want to go back and take a look at that. Talk a little bit about those public hearings, and if a public hearing is scheduled, it's my understanding if somebody just doesn't show up, that public hearing is then canceled. Can you talk about who those folks are?
I can, 1 second. President Bourne, commissioners, the at-large commissioner and the commissioner from the affected district are required to attend both public hearings. If these commissioners do not attend, the nomination is immediately void, although it may be resubmitted.
And then that process would start over again?
Correct. That's how that would be interpreted.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? Commissioner Musich?
I have a clarifying question. We keep saying that this is not named after a person, but I'm pretty sure Carl W. Kronig was a person. So I'm a little
President
perplexed
Bourne,
about that statement.
Commissioner Musich, very astute point. In this particular case, the naming portion that's being asked to change is interpretive to nature.
Okay.
So I wasn't interpreting it as a new name consideration, but just simply that change from interpretive center to nature center.
Okay, so it's based on the component of the name that's changing being assessed to be whether or not it's a person, rather than the entirety of the name of the space that's being named.
President Bourne, commissioners, I would, maybe defer to council to if we get deeper into this, but in this particular case, the name already exists on the amenity, so we're not actually asking to consider the fruits of the work of that particular individual. We're just changing the site itself.
Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner Musich. Is there any further discussion or input? Seeing none, this is a name or rename, so it will require 6 votes. I will ask the secretary to please take the roll.
Commissioner Musich.
No.
Commissioner Cogill.
Aye.
Commissioner Severson.
Aye.
Commissioner Meyer.
Aye.
Commissioner French.
Aye.
Commissioner Forney.
No.
Vice President Hassan. Absent. President Bourne.
I'll abstain.
You have 4 ayes, 2 nays, 1 abstain, and 2 absent.
The resolution fails. Moving on, Vice Chair Cogill.
All right, thank you, President Bourne. Move resolution 2019-314 on behalf of the Administration and Finance Committee, a resolution banning the use of single-use plastics in citywide events conducted or permitted in the Minneapolis Park and Recreation System for permit requests that occur after April 1st, 2020, with health and safety exceptions for emergency response and water quality issues.
2019-314 has been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? I think I saw Commissioner French's light go on.
Yeah, I'd like to add an amendment. I'd like to add some different language to this. So I would like to move.
Would you like to state the amendment?
So potential language for modification. Resolution banning use of single-use plastics in a citywide event conducted or permitted in the Minneapolis Park Board Recreation System for permit requests that occur after April 1st, 2020, with a health and safety exception for emergency response and water quality issues, an exception for vendors that meet target market program eligibility criteria as defined in city ordinance, but requires TMP vendors to use recyclable products.
There is an amendment on the floor. Is there a second to the amendment, which would add the language of an exception, a carve-out for target market program vendors, and a requirement that they use recycled products or recyclable products? Is there a second to that proposed amendment? Is there a second to that proposed amendment?
Second.
It's been, the amendment has been seconded. Discussion on the amendment. Commissioner French, to your amendment, you have the privilege to speak first.
Yeah, I remember when this first came up, when we were talking about this in committee, and I brought up the question, how does this affect minority businesses, and how does it affect small businesses? More often than not, when we pass resolutions that we think are helpful and our good intentions, the impact sometimes are devastating and harmful. We do environmental impact studies when we build new buildings or build new projects to make sure it doesn't impact the environment adversely. I think we need to start doing that when we pass resolutions or start offering resolutions and seeing how they affect different communities adversely, whether it be a small business, whether it be minorities, whether it be labor. I think we need to really have some real conversations about the resolutions that we pass in good intentions, but really think about the adverse effects on some of those. Thank you.
To the amendment, just for clarity, are Commissioner Musich and Meyer, are you both to the amendment? Yes. Then I think the sequence I saw was Meyer, yep, Musich, and Severson to the amendment.
So I have a few concerns about this. I want to learn more details about which of our vendors meet the target market program and to read this whole sheet. I'm also concerned about how we're going to define recyclable products. I would like that to be, very specifically defined, because plastics right now, almost all of them are ranked 1 through 7, but if you have a number 7 plastic, that's not really recyclable. Not number 6 either. Like Hennepin County will not take them. So I'm open to an amendment of this kind, but I think where I'm at is I think we need to have some further discussion about this. So I'm going to vote against this amendment at this time, and then propose to postpone the full resolution to our next meeting on October 2nd.
Thank you, Commissioner Meyer. Commissioner Musich to the amendment.
Thank you, President Bourne. So I too am open to this sort of an amendment. I don't really feel that we're ready to pass this resolution as a whole at this point, or much less this resolution. I really would like to see us do a bit more outreach to the community, the impacted stakeholders, to better understand what happens to the recyclables that we are putting into the system, so that if there are some recyclables that are truly being recycled in a way that has a full cycle, that we can include acknowledgement of that in the policy, so that we're finding a way to address the concerns that this policy is trying to address in a way that's not damaging to our vendors, to people that are participating in our events, and that also is respectful of the environment in a way that is really genuine and gets us to a policy that's good from the get-go, rather than something that's flawed, that we know is flawed, that we know we're going to have to continuously reassess. So if it's possible, I'd like us to consider tabling this entire discussion so that we can do more engagement with stakeholders, better understand plastics and the recycling process, and then proceed from there.
Thank you, Commissioner Musich. Is there any further discussion on the amendment? Commissioner Cogill to the amendment.
I greatly appreciate Commissioner French's amendment. My one longer-term concern, because I do think that it makes sense to postpone on this and deepen our discussion a bit, is that the exemption is in perpetuity. I apologize if I haven't made clear enough the negative impacts of plastics on the environment to my fellow commissioners, and I think certainly need to do a bit more work on that. I think that there's substantial precedent across the country for conducting this. Even those who have had concerns here tonight testifying have said that the goal is laudable. If we don't start somewhere, we're never going to get anywhere, and if we don't take the time, I'm hoping soon, I'm hoping within this calendar year, to work out some of these kinks, we're just going to go back to the status quo, which is allowing the continuation of substantial amounts of what is usually not recycled waste to continue to infiltrate our riverways and waterways, and to encourage in our governmental systems and in our capitalist system the continued use of these products for capital gain at the expense of our environment, at a time when encouraging carbon emissions is major detriment to society. I find it really concerning to continue that. So I certainly have some urgency about this, but I very much am interested in doing this with and not for or counter to our many partners in the community. So I certainly appreciate everybody who came out to discuss this tonight, and I would be happy to postpone so that we can have a couple more discussions.
Thank you, Commissioner Cogill. Commissioner Forney, or I'm sorry, excuse me, Commissioner Musich for the second time, followed by Commissioner Forney.
I'd like to make a motion to table this item.
Second.
There's been a motion to table and seconded on tabling the amendment.
So that we can have further conversations.
Motion to table is not debatable. All those in favor of tabling the proposed amendment signify by saying aye.
I don't want to table the amendment.
Point of clarification, please.
Yeah.
We have an amendment on the floor, so we need to vote on the amendment. Are we trying to table this amendment?
Commissioner,
I would like to table the entire motion.
I will call the entire board to order. Commissioner Musich made a motion to table the amendment. It has been seconded. A motion to table is not debatable. We will proceed to a vote to table the amendment, and then we can move on to the main motion.
I would like the parliamentarian to weigh in on whether or not I can request to table the entire motion during discussion of an amendment.
The Council Rice, is a motion to table debatable?
That's not what I
A motion to table is not debatable. I think that Commissioner Musich is making a parliamentary inquiry as to is the motion a motion to table the amendment or to table the main motion?
That is
and
correct.
I understand that, and we have a amendment before us, and we are dealing with business on the amendment. Commissioner Musich, would you like to withdraw your amendment on the motion to table the amendment?
If I can only request to table the amendment, then yes, I will withdraw my motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Musich. Is there any other discussion on the amendment? Commissioner French, would you like to withdraw the amendment?
I would like to withdraw my amendment in understanding that we will table the whole motion.
Thank you. The amendment has been withdrawn. To the main motion, Commissioner Musich, do you have a motion?
Thank you, President Bourne. Yes, I do. I would like to make a motion to table this item so that we can have further conversations with our stakeholders and do further research to better understand this issue prior to making policy decisions about it.
There's a motion
Thank
to
you.
table. Is there a second? The motion to table has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Excuse me, it's undebatable. All those in favor of tabling the resolution, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, abstentions, the main motion is now tabled. Moving on.
A point of order.
Commissioner Forney.
Commissioner Hassan has returned, and we had a failure of the last motion prior about the proning. I was wondering if we can entertain that resolution again with knowing that Commissioner Hassan is in. I'm just asking a point of order.
Commissioner Forney, the item has been dealt with. The roll has been taken. Commissioner Forney, you were on the prevailing side of that resolution. you may put forward a resolution to reconsider a motion.
Thank
if
you. I
would
would like to
do
put a
so.
motion to reconsider the motion. Excuse me. Please. Just wanted to read what the motion was. Okay, Resolution 2019-313.
There is a motion to reconsider Resolution 2019-313. Is there a second on the motion to reconsider?
Second.
The motion to reconsider Resolution 2019-313 has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on the resolution to reconsider? Commissioner Severson, on the motion to, shall we reconsider is the question.
Thank you, President Bourne. I'm hoping we can reconsider this and not play with the north side like it's a pond. This is in my district, in the wonderful north side, and staff has brought this forward so there's less confusion, and I'd like to increase participation at hopefully the new name of Carl W. Cronin Nature Center instead of the Interpretive Center. This is absolutely asinine that we're going through this right now to try to win points of political pundits. Let's not do that. Let's do the right thing and move this forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Severson, on the resolution to reconsider. Is there any other discussion on shall we reconsider 2019-313? Seeing none, shall the board reconsider 2019-313? All those in favor of reconsideration, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Abstentions? The motion shall be reconsidered. Is there any discussion on resolution 2019-313? Commissioner Severson.
I would ask for your support on this so we can create less confusion, particularly in a place that we need more people from North Minneapolis to show up and participate and enjoy the Nature Center, particularly along the Mississippi River. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Severson. Is there any further discussion on resolution 2019-313? Seeing none, I would ask the secretary to please take the roll.
Commissioner Musich.
No.
Commissioner Cogill.
Aye.
Commissioner Severson.
Aye.
Commissioner Meyer.
Aye.
Commissioner French.
Aye.
Commissioner Forney.
No.
Vice President Hassan.
Aye.
President Bourne.
I'll abstain.
You have 5 ayes, 2 noes, 1 abstain, and 1 absent.
The motion fails. Moving on to the Planning Committee, Chair Forney.
On behalf of the Planning Committee, I'd like to move Resolution 2019-315, resolution approving a modified easement agreement with Excel Energy that realigns and reduces the existing utility easement area near the Longfellow House within Minnehaha Regional Park.
Second.
The resolution has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on 2019-315? Seeing none, I would ask the secretary to please take the roll.
Commissioner Musich.
Aye.
Commissioner Cogill.
Aye.
Commissioner Severson.
Aye.
Commissioner Meyer.
Aye.
Commissioner French.
Aye.
Commissioner Forney.
Aye.
Vice President Hassan.
Aye.
President Bourne.
Aye.
You have 8 ayes, 1 absent.
2019-315 is approved. Chair Forney.
I'd like to move Resolution 2019-316, resolution concurring with the determination of temporary occupancy of parkland at Central Mississippi Riverfront Regional Park under Section 4F of the Transportation Act of 1966 related to the Minnesota Department of Transportation project to rehabilitate the 3rd Avenue Bridge.
2019-316 has been moved. Is there a second?
Second, I'm wondering.
2019-316 has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion, Commissioner Musich?
It's a typographical error. We've capitalized the road, but not separated it from 3. So I don't know if we need that space in there for it to be accurate or not, but.
I think if you're suggesting a
space
typographical correction, we would receive that by consent.
Okay.
Resolution 20, and the Secretary can record that. Commissioner Cogill on 2019-316.
Thank you. When this was in committee, I'd asked about the replanting program, and after the MnDOT representative was here, I spoke with him afterwards, and he said there were some additional trees that were going to be removed along one of the buttresses of the bridge, and I'm just wondering if staff has had any additional conversations with MnDOT about that, or if there's any plan for replanting so we're not losing any of these trees. Or we're maybe losing them, but they will be replanted at the same number.
President Bourne, Commissioner Cogill, correct, we're still in discussion with MnDOT and MnDOT staff.
Okay.
We have Chris here tonight if you want any more clarification. Some of the vegetation that has to come down, especially along the west abutment, relates to an historic wall that they're trying to preserve and renovate.
Yeah.
So they're really, one thing I think even from the first time we came to the board, when MnDOT presented Third Avenue, I explained to the board that I thought MnDOT was being very forthright in their discussions with us, willing to work with us. So even though we don't have it exactly down how many trees they'll plant, they're more than willing to work with us. And I think Chris will nod his head to that, unless you'd like to hear it from him.
That's fine. I just wanted to know if there were any updates. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Cogill. Is there any further discussion on 2019-316? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, 2019-316 carries. Moving on to new business, we have a report on our full-service community schools and a youth line update on interim assistant superintendent of recreation, Larry Humphrey.
Thank you, President Bourne and Commissioners. Well, my thunder was stolen tonight. Vanessa Gill, who is our new full-service community school coordinator, got called out for a family matter about 10 after 6. So the highlight of my presentation was going to be introducing her. In lieu of that, I'm going to read a short bio about her, and I'm going to invite her back to hopefully our October 2nd board meeting. But just a little background on Vanessa. She has 10 years of experience as a youth worker and educator. She most recently worked for community education with the St. Paul Public Schools. She has an entrepreneurial management degree from the Carlson School of Management and a master's in education from the University of Minnesota. She's also worked for the Minneapolis Public Schools, Eastside Thrive, and the Plymouth Youth Center. She loves traveling to tropical destinations, and she also likes concerts and cooking. But I will invite her to the next meeting. She apologized. She had to run to a family issue this evening. And a brief youth line update. We have had 3 resignations in the youth line area, so we do have 3 openings. We are hoping to have those filled sometime in mid-October to late October in that area. Hopefully the jobs will all be posted next week, and we'll be moving from there.
Thank you, Acting Assistant Superintendent. Is there any discussion on the report? Thank you for the report, and we look forward to meeting our new staff member. Moving on to petitions and communications, I will start with Commissioner Musich.
Thank you, President Bourne. Last night I attended a meeting about water issues around Nokomis and Hiawatha and Solomon Park. There continues to be issues with public and private infrastructure in this area due to the high levels of groundwater. That we've been studying how this is impacting people, what potential things can be done to address it. The Watershed District is working on a white paper. They've also hired the University of Minnesota to review that paper as a third party to determine whether or not the science is sound and the conclusions are something they can agree with. That information should be made available to the public sometime early next year. I'm hopeful that we can do our homework and get to a place where we're doing a bonding request to help us adapt to climate change for the 2022 bonding cycle. We are looking at an additional amount of trails that will be underwater as we continue to experience large amounts of rainfall in the future. So I am hopeful. I did notice that many of my colleagues' parks are also really, really wet and experiencing this issue as well. So I am hopeful that I will find support for that as we complete all of our master plans and have a better picture of what we're going to do moving forward. I've also noticed that there's a pattern emerging amongst the way that items are handled on our committee agendas and our full board agenda, in that relevant items have been moved from committees that are chaired by people of color and women to those that are chaired by white men. This pattern is concerning to me, and should it continue, I would like to know what steps leadership will take to break it and work to empower minorities on the board to be successful in their roles in leadership. That's all I got. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Musich. Commissioner Severson.
I just want to say it's really unfortunate that this group doesn't come together more often and get things done that should get done without any political fiascos. It's just really unfortunate, particularly when a member brings up something that we voted on and failed, and then it's just, like I said, it's just absolutely terrible. And I hope that we can work on getting more stuff done for the communities, particularly communities that look like mine. I'm just really disappointed right now.
Thank you, Commissioner Severson. Commissioner Forney.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been an active couple of weeks. I was delighted to go to the Monarch Festival. That is just such a marvelous event, and I thank staff for every day being so much more creative on engaging people. Our vendors or tablers, I'm not sure what to refer to them, participants were just so imaginative in all the things that they did. With Commissioner Colville and Commissioner Musich, and also Superintendent Bangoro was on the bike ride, and I just applaud all of, what was it, 73, something like that, police officers were there and cheering us on. I mean, several officers were there with bells, and anyway, it warms me that we have that type of support, and this is probably the most glorious event to me because it's our opportunity to get out there and be in the parks without cars, and thank you all for putting it together. Several other meetings. One in particular is the Minneapolis Parks Foundation. They were very successful at their sunrise breakfast and fundraising so that they can go forward for another year. Next year will be their 10th year that the foundation has been in existence, and so many things that they have touched in this system with their successful efforts in augmenting, our finances. I attended a couple of the citizen advisory committees for Southwest, the master planning for Curry, and applaud all of our citizens that not only are representative there, but also how our staff engages beyond. There's many things that are coming forward. I'm going to be going to the Nobel Conference on climate change next week, and I support very much Commissioner Musich's climate change efforts, and hope that we can make that a part of our agenda. Want to announce that the foundation will be having their next gen talk October 10th. Mitchell Silver, I'll talk more about that in another point, but please put that on your calendar. And I also just would like to extend my condolences to Commissioner Vitow and her family upon the loss in her family.
Thank you, Commissioner Forney. Commissioner French.
I guess I kind of want to address the gorilla in the room a little bit. Every time I went out when I was getting elected, when I was campaigning, I went and I talked about increasing youth programming in our park system. I talked about providing jobs in our park system to the most disadvantaged youth in our city. I'm unapologetic about it. I want to make sure that we can have the funding for our youth in this city, and there are no sacred cows in the Minneapolis Park Board. So I didn't just talk about cutting money from the police department. I'm thinking about cutting money from everywhere to make sure that our youth have what they need. We went to the state last year, and they didn't give us the money we needed to make sure our job program was substantial. For 2 weeks, I sat and watched the news and talked about how black and brown kids were beating up people downtown Minneapolis. That's all I heard about. And all I heard was that we need more police. We need more police. Well, you know, I grew up in the early 1990s when they called us super predators. They told us we're incorrigible, and there was no remorse for us. And they put 107,000 new cops on the street. And they began mass incarceration. I think the way to end mass incarceration, to prevent mass incarceration, is to provide programming in our parks, providing safe places for our kids. That should be our priority. We're talking about $6 a house. We talk about our youth initiative. We're talking about $6 per house in Minneapolis. I don't think that's a lot to invest in our future. It's not. These are our kids. It's so much easier to just lock them up and put them in prison. But it's a lot harder to sit down and talk to them and have a conversation with them and ask them what's bothering them, what's going on. We need people in place for those kids to be around. So I heard a lot of people come up here and talk about the police. The police is now my enemy. I just prioritize our youth, the kids who live in this city. And so for staff, if that's an issue or problem, you please take it up with me. I don't believe our parks are going to be less safe if we decide to reduce police in our parks. 2% of the crime that happens in Minneapolis happens in our parks. 2%. And it's real easy to scare folks into thinking that we need a lot more cops on the street. And the only thing that happens when that happens is people like me go to jail. And I'm telling you, I'm more fearful of 6 cops standing around than 6 black youth standing around. I'm just as a black man in America. So that's all I wanted to say about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner French. Commissioner Cogill.
Thank you, President Bourne. I was on the bike tour this weekend, and I had a great time, and one of the things that was a special cherry on top for that entire tour was noting that we did not have any single-use plastic bottles at any of the stations around the entire tour. I did the whole 32 miles, and I was very happy to see that, and thank staff so much for doing that so quickly, even though we have not passed this resolution. It showed me that it was not too hard to turn over an event and make it single-use plastic bottle free. And there was still ample water at all these stations for the nearly 2,000 riders that morning. So that was a lot of fun. It was really great and just really wonderful, and big thank you to everybody. Thank you to all the police who helped out that whole morning. Thank you to all the staff who were at all the different locations throughout our system. It's an incredible event, and it really just makes you appreciate the breathtaking park system that we have.
Thank you, Commissioner Cogill. Commissioner Meyer.
Thank you. I also wanted to share my condolences for Commissioner Vita for the loss of her uncle. I'm sad that I can't go to the Noble Climate Conference. I'm going to be in Baltimore for NRPA instead, but I'm looking forward to a report back from that and any things that you get from that to share with us. Forgot to mention when we were talking about the bonding, but I'm definitely open to, in the future, adding a bonding request around climate adaptation to relocate trails and bridges to deal with all the flooding that we're dealing with. I didn't feel we were ready at this time, but I will be supportive of that in the future. I attended the City Audit Committee, and we had a lot of discussions about police at the last meeting. There were a lot of concerning things that were brought up at the audit committee about off-duty police work, and a lot of recommendations that were made from that I would like to have our park police take a look at. So I've asked Chair Vita to take that up on her police advisory committee. For example, we should consider having a mandatory maximum number of hours that police can work, because it's a concerning issue when we're not keeping track of that, which is the case at the city. Also concerns about being paid in cash, which a lot of other cities ban because there's sometimes corruption, or at least a perception of corruption. So a lot of different issues that came out of that I'm not sure if we have the same issues at the park board, but I would like to have us take a look at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Meyer. Vice President Hassan. Thank you, Vice President Hassan. I just want to start off with an apology to Assistant Superintendent Barrick and his staff for the amount of work that they put into and the taxpayers in Minneapolis for the amount of work that you put into the Corral Koning renaming item that came forward. I know staff dedicated a lot of time on that. I would encourage you to, it seems like it is the will of this board that for that small procedural change, would like to go through an 8-month process with angels dancing on pins. That there's a lot of opportunities for that. There's a lot of flaws in that process. I also agree with commissioners that it's time to do some work, and instead of complaining about processes, it's time to do some work and fix those processes. And I would look forward to the commissioners that have the largest reservation with those processes, that there is a point brought up to every single time it comes forward for the last 10 years, that they do some work to bring forward some solutions. So again, my apologies to staff. My apologies to park users that were not served during that time when staff weren't pulling buckthorn because they were typing reports for tonight. But the process is important, and we can go through this 8-month process as an exercise to see the flaws and the things that need to be fixed in that process. A reminder that the Board of Estimate and Taxation meeting is on September 25th, where the city will be taking a vote on the city's maximum levy. We've been engaged with members at the Board of Estimate and Taxation. I think there is a elephant in the room that the mayor and the park board are having a healthy disagreement over how much funding is available. I do want to publicly thank the mayor, as I've said multiple times. I think the conversation and the disagreement is a healthy one. The city of Minneapolis has a very difficult budget with many competing priorities. There's not a thing in the mayor's budget that I have reservations with. I think the disagreement is around the argument of scarcity. I think in a city that has experienced billions of dollars of unprecedented development, I agree with Commissioner French that the difference of $6 for our youth is a nominal one, and we're continuing to engage with members of the Board of Estimate and Taxation around that difference of opinion. Should the Board of Estimate and Taxation choose not to raise the levy by what I think a lot of us feel is a very, very nominal amount, then Superintendent Bangura has a lot of hard work ahead of him. I think the priorities of this board is to make that investment in youth. I believe in a holistic approach to the solutions of violence in the city, and I think that is a investment in our police force. I think that there's some opportunities for for our police force and the Minneapolis police force to be better in some of that work, but I believe that there's a holistic pathway there where we invest in our police on one end, but we also invest more in our city's youth, and I think that that's the best pathway forward. Again, I want to thank the mayor for being one of the only mayors that I think the only mayor that I have served with that has come out of the gates in these budget decisions saying the parks are a priority and we are not going to cut parks. Of the 3 mayors I've served with, he's the first one that has come out and said that. That said, there's a difference of opinion on how much we think the city of Minneapolis can afford to pay for a very valued service. So that vote is happening on September 25th. I hope it goes in the direction that the park board does not have to make some very difficult choices, because we will see impacts across the board. And I'm sure different commissioners have different opinions of where those impacts will come from. And I'm looking forward to seeing the superintendent's suggestions. I actually hope that I don't have to see the superintendent's suggestions. I think the simplest solution is raising the levy a modest amount. Superintendent Bangora, you had something to add during petitions and communications?
Yeah, thank you, President Moore, appreciate that. I just also wanted to say real quickly about the bike tour. What an amazing experience it was. I was out there with it was great to see Commissioner Forney, Commissioner Musich, and of course Commissioner Cogill, who literally took off and was gone. I have never, I mean, it was incredible. My son was just in awe of you. He said he wants to ride his bike like you someday. And I think you finished 32 miles as quickly as we finished 19. So it's pretty great. But I drafted my son the whole time, which got me through my 19 miles. So, but I wanted to thank, our park staff. They did an amazing job. Recreation, community outreach, everybody that was out there from staff did an amazing job. I'm so proud of them. Also like to thank our officers who did an incredible job out there that day. And I think it was, not just our park police, but other agencies that were participating. I was incredibly grateful for the work that they did, the work that staff did. And I just wanted to publicly say how proud I am of that, of the bike tour. What an amazing day and a really great event. Just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Bangora. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
It's been moved. Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor of adjournment, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, we are adjourned. Chair Meyer, I believe.
Time being 6:56, I call to order the Legislative Intergovernmental Committee. Secretary will please call the roll.
Commissioner Severson.
Present.
Vice President Hassan.
Here.
Commissioner French.
Here.
Chair Meyer.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of September 4th, 2019?
So moved.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes. We have a study report on the agenda for the 2020 Hennepin Youth Sports Program grant application planning. So we have Mimi Kalb and Adam Arvidsson for that. Or Cliff, sorry.
Chair Meyer, Commissioners. So, good evening. It's that time of the year where we look again to our 2020 Hennepin Youth Sport Program grant applications. So tonight we're just going to go over kind of the program in general to make sure the board understands where that program comes from, kind of look at past awards, and kind of highlight a couple of projects, and then we'll present just a preliminary list of projects that we could be considered this year. As you said, Commissioner Meyer, Chair Meyer, Mimi Kalb, and I kind of work on this with other staff, especially in this first round when we do the study report. We also have with us a partner with the park board from the Fred Wells Tennis Center, and we'll introduce some of those staff later on if you have any questions about their initiative. Okay. So the Hennepin Youth Sport Program really began with the funding of the Twin Stadium. Again, there's a percentage of sales that happen at the Twin Stadium that go back into a fund. And that fund then is distributed through to youth, primarily youth sports or youth programming within Hennepin County. And we've been fairly successful. And really this program began in 2009. So since 2009, so the past grant award or the projects really kind of, there's a full range for us, right? So there's some artificial turf soccer fields, there's improvements to our #1 baseball fields, youth and softball field improvements, 100% accessible playground at Minneapolis Park, other playground improvements, most notably at Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. Park, tennis court renovations, both indoor and outdoor swimming pool renovations and new construction, and that if you think about those two investments, kind of unique within Hennepin County, both leading to providing teaching pool for teaching facilities within our system. Even for snowmaking facilities at Worth, there was a grant money there. And then most recently, skate park money was given to us. So in all, it's really been a boon for the Minneapolis Park Board. If we think about, almost $12 million worth of projects, really over a third of that coming through these grants in the last 10 years. So it's been a big help, and basically to augment our current capital program. I just want to highlight just a couple of projects that this board may be aware of, but again, there was money that was received in 2014 for the Weber NSP. And again, part of the Weber pool is a wading pool. There's an open swim area and also a lane area. And then our staff and others have provide swim lessons at this facility. So it's been a great boon for the north side and on a great facility that we have. Another facility that we received grant money for really in 2016 was the improvements at the Boston Field Park. Now we had capital dollars to redo the baseball and softball fields there. We applied for Hennepin Youth Sport Program monies really to, if you look at in the bottom of this slide, to really redo this multi-purpose field that is across the street from public housing. It was an opportunity for us to sod it so that we could get play, so neighborhood kids could get on there early. We irrigate it so it stays a higher quality. And then we don't program that, i.e. we do not rent out that field, so it's for open use. And also there's a basketball court that was put in along on the opposite side or the east side of the west side of the park, again for neighborhood use and open play. So those are just two of the many projects that we've received funding for over the last 10 years. If we look at kind of our internal criteria that we try to use when we evaluate projects and what Hennepin County does, it is interesting that, again, we align with our neighborhood equity metrics by looking at how do we augment existing capital projects. And some of the ones that we'll show you tonight are augmenting existing capital and some will be new. One of the things that we know, right, that the second bullet on the Hennepin County grant criteria is partnerships. So we look to partnerships when we can when we're trying to fund these projects. Tonight we'll have one of our partners here that provides programming for Minneapolis youth, so they'll be talking about that. But we try to use this criteria as we evaluate and bring potential projects forward to the board. Then just to kind of set the groundwork for which Hennepin County commissioner districts kind of overlap City of Minneapolis, and a lot of you may be very aware of this, so it could be information that you already know, but if you look at Commissioner Fernando's District 2, that stretches all the way from Plymouth to St. Anthony Village, but it crosses north and northeast Minneapolis. Commissioner Green's District 3, stretches into Minneapolis almost to that, what I'll call that 35W line. And then Commissioner Connolly's District 4, stretching down to the southern, towards Fort Snelling, which is one of our projects tonight. So when we look at projects, we're looking at, based on some advice that we were given over the last 10 years, to really focus on projects in each of the commissioner districts. So when we show you this list in a few minutes here, it will be projects by Hennepin County Commissioner districts. So again, what we're trying to show the county that we've got priorities in each of these districts. Now, one of the things that's interesting here is that Hennepin County has selected the Minnesota Amateur Sports Commission as the group that kind of collects all of the grant applications. They order them. They will do a preliminary review of them, making sure that all the grant materials, et cetera, are complete. And then they may rank them based on youth participation or what they see as a value. And then that list is given to Hennepin County, right, for final decision. So again, the decision of what grant monies are issued come from Hennepin County Commissioners themselves. So on to what projects that we're looking or are going to at least present to you tonight and look for some feedback. Again, as a reminder, there are no decisions that you have to make here tonight. So staff is really looking, Mimi and I and others are looking for your feedback of what you've heard out there, your acceptance of these projects, et cetera. So one thing that I just want to point out is that the Park Board has a current understanding with the Minneapolis Public Schools. So through 2020, or for this 2019 for 20 grant year, we will not be applying for projects within District 2 or Commissioner Fernando's district. So you won't see any projects, hence there's no projects listed under District 2. Within Commissioner District 3, Commissioner Green, there are 2 projects that we're talking about here. One is at Parade Ice. The idea is to renovate the existing locker room into more of a youth hockey training facility. Again, Parade Ice is the home of what we'll call as Minneapolis youth hockey. Mimi can talk a little bit more about that as we go through that, if you have questions about that particular, the extent of that particular project. Again, it's to serve a broad range of youth associated with hockey and skating. And again, Parade Ice is a facility that the Park Board owns and operates. Painter Park is the next project within Commissioner Green's district. This is really a renovation. We have capital dollars that we will be for 2020, so it matches well with our capital improvement plan. This would be to really redevelop the multi-purpose field at Painter Park. There's a basketball court, there's playgrounds, there's a baseball, what we'll call a skinned infield baseball. What this funding that we have, what we're asking for would be to really regrade and make a natural turf multi-use field that could be used by neighborhood kids and recreation, kind of Park Board rec teams use. District 4, Commissioner Connolly's district, we have 2 projects. One is one of our projects at Stewart Park. Stewart Park was a recipient of an earlier Hennepin Youth Sport grant to create a soccer 6 field. For those of you who know Stewart Park well, it's a well-used field, it's a well-used facility, it's next to a school. In the master planning process for the South Service area, there was a realignment of some of an area that was designated skating and playground that we could squeeze in another a multi-purpose kind of soccer field. So again, trying to using these dollars to maximize neighborhood access to athletic fields. What we would be constructing would not be a field that would be rented out. It's really meant for informal play. And if you have gone to Stewart Park on a Sunday afternoon to see the number of families that use that facility, that artificial turf facility now, I mean, it's pretty amazing. So what we're trying to do in the master plan and then with these funds would be to expand that use in those areas. The last project within Commissioner Connolly's district is really an improvement to the Fred Wells Tennis Center. And again, I'll just give a little bit of background. Out at Fort Snelling, we have since 2001, the Fred Wells Tennis Center has operated on on land that they leased from the Minneapolis Park Board. I happened to be at the Park Board when Superintendent Emeritus Merrill came forward with Fred Wells to develop this tennis facility out at Fort Snelling. And the impetus was to really engage with Minneapolis youth, allow them an opportunity to be exposed to tennis, and also provide other programming for them after school at the facility. So it's been almost right 20 years of a partnership, and those facilities need some help. So one of the things that they're looking at is really to redo their second dome or second bubble over their second set of courts, so that they can continue to offer that facility. And I have staff from Fred Wells Tennis Center here tonight. Lisa Mouchette, if you want to just introduce who you have here. And sure.
Good evening. My name is Esther Tsai, the Executive Director of Fred Wells Tennis and Education Center. Thank you for this opportunity, and thank you for allowing me to be reconnecting with you for the third time. Firstly, on behalf of Fred Wells Tennis and Education Center community, and most of all, our school partner, the Minneapolis District No. 1 School, we thank you for renewing the lease agreement for another 20 years. We're looking forward to continue enriching our work in the Minneapolis area in partnership with you. This evening, we ask for your support with the dome replacement. This dome replacement is key to the heart of our mission, providing accessibility to the under-resourced youth through our tennis work program. As I have provided you in my previous visit with you a folder that describes what we do, I just want to recap what tennis work is all about. Tennis work program is a free tennis and social emotional learning program that benefits the under-resourced youth. For the past 16 years, we have been providing after-school program, in-school program, leadership program, summer outreach program, in partnership with the Minneapolis Anderson United School, Bancroft Elementary School, Fowler School as well. And we have also been actively in partnership with the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board Department for activities in the rec park as well. And here with me, I have Judy Long, our program coordinator, who can best describe what we have been doing in your beautiful park and inspiring youth to stay healthy and also to feel safe in this program. I would like to highlight in 2018, Fred Wells Tennis and Education Center were recognized by the Aspen Institute in Washington as Project Play Champion. We were one of 21 organizations nationwide and the only tennis organization honored by the Aspen Institute as Project Play Champion. To be a Project Play Champion, organization must take new, meaningful, and specific actions to grow sports participation with a shared goal of making sports accessible to all kids regardless of zip code or ability. So this mission of ours is very powerful to all these kids. And I hope you will support what we do out there. And again, I invite you to come visit us, and we will show you what we do on site, and also visit us when we're off site as well. And I'm going to have Judy Long, our program coordinator, to talk to you about the activities that we do in your park. Judy?
Hello. Thank you, Commissioners, all for listening and for considering the proposal. So I'm a certified K-6 teacher, and I'm also a certified tennis coach. I have been coaching in the Minneapolis Park and Rec system for 28 years, both as a volunteer and as a coach. I've worked at Powderhorn, Corcoran, Lake Hiawatha. I'm currently employed and have been for many years at Lake Nokomis. I love it. I love working with kids. Both for my teaching career and my coaching career, have intentionally decided to stay in Minneapolis, which is where I live. I just live like 1 block from the park, so pretty easy. In 2004, I was hired at Fred Wells, and I was pretty excited. I was able to combine both of my careers, my tennis coaching and my teaching. I headed up the after-school program, and we provide free tennis, free transportation to Minneapolis kids. We work closely with the Minneapolis Park. So that's some of the data. I'm just going to give you a story. Annie Olson is a longtime Minneapolis Park Board employee. She was a worker at Sibley Park. So I walked into all the parks that are near Fort Snelling on that side of Minneapolis or accessible by the light rail. And I met her, introduced myself, and she said, well, I have a cooking class. I have like 6 middle school girls. They're not sporty at all. They really aren't. And I said, okay, let's do it. And she really wanted to get them to be sporty. So she would hop the light rail, sometimes with them, and come to the center. Sometimes we were able to afford a van. Kind of varied from year to year. She brought those girls, and what happened with those girls? We did free tennis with them for 2 nights a week. We did tennis on the courts, and then we also always have a girls' circle every time we meet. Talk about what are the issues going on at home, in their life, confidence builders. We did service projects. We did crazy things, really fun things. For that particular group of girls, what happened to them? Quite a few, almost all of them went on to play high school tennis at South High School. A couple of them became co-captains. One of the girls who at first refused to come, she would hang out with the girls but not come out to the tennis center. She also became a captain for the South High School tennis team and joined the rugby team. So truly, she became a sporty girl. 3 of those girls became volunteers at Fred Wells and mentored other girls in that program. Also, they volunteered at we have a summer camp program, and 2 of them became staff. So we don't just say we do youth leadership, we really do youth leadership. We keep up with kids all the time. We pick them up at their houses, we pick them up at the parks. Transportation is always an obstacle for underserved youth. We are really creative about getting kids out to the tennis center, and we get them out other places too. So a lot of we do college tours with them. We have gotten scholarships for them at Gustavus College for the tennis camp. I don't know, what can I tell you? We love kids, we do it, and the parks is part of it because the connections I have through coaching through the parks we handshake with them at Fred Wells, and we just help each other. So we're all in the same business. So hope you will support us. Thanks.
Thank you. I'll finish up real quickly here. There may be some questions and comments. So just so you understand distribution of these projects that we're talking about, again, they're within the 2 districts that will be applying, that we feel that we're able to apply grant for grant money for. Again, there's no action tonight. Given the feedback we're hoping to receive from all of you tonight, we'll put together an action, bring it back before you on October 2nd to the full board, hopefully on the 16th, and then our applications are due November 4th. Before I finish up, Commissioner Meyer, just one more thing to just make sure the board is aware. The Hennepin Youth Sport Program grant application process requires that the park board be fiscal agents for agencies such as Fred Wells outside of the park board. We would operate as the LGU. That is why they're coming through us for the application. Last year, if you remember, the mighty, sorry, my mistakes, hockey, Dynamites applied for grant funds for their portable refrigeration system that went on urban venture fields. We also were the fiscal agent for that grant. We're still in the process of negotiating the final arrangements and purchase, but just so the board understands that that was another project that came through us, even though we weren't actually operating that refrigeration system. So I just wanted to make sure the board's aware, and we'll stand for questions if you have any.
Thank you, Mr. Swenson. Can you review what our arrangement is with the school board and just go over the history with that?
Chair Meyer, I'll try to do my best. So in 2017, there was an agreement kind of formalized staff to staff. Both boards agreed to, and they highlighted projects over a 3-year period, Mimi, right? That within each of the commissioner districts, they happened to be 2 years in Hennepin County Commissioner Fernando's district. They highlighted projects, and then the park board agreed to not apply for projects and compete against the school board within that district. And again, this goes back to a comment that I made, and how we've been operating over the last 10 years, is that we try to focus and highlight one project per commissioner district. So again, the school board trying to partner with us instead of competing against us, or that we kind of not apply for anything in District 2 at this point. Does that help? Does that answer your question, Commissioner Meyer?
Yeah, I was just going to suggest that it seems to be the type of thing that would make sense to discuss at our joint meeting. So next August, I would propose that we do that. Let's see, I didn't keep track of who was first, but Commissioner Musich.
Thank you, Chair Meyer. I'm not on this committee, so I appreciate being given the opportunity to speak. When I received our agenda, I went back in time and looked at the historical committee that this has been heard in. This has typically been heard in the typically been heard in the Admin and Finance Committee since at least 2013, and I would like to understand why it is instead being heard in the intergovernmental and legislative agenda, and whether or not Chair Vita was consulted on the change of venue for this topic.
I'll speak first to that and then invite Secretary Ringgold to jump in. I previously requested that the IGR committee be more relevant, and when there's a question of which committee something is assigned to, that if it makes sense for it to be an IGR, for it to go there. And I think it absolutely does fit that in this case, because this is something where we are working with both the county and the school board. And you know, the admin committee has the biggest agenda out of any of the committees. So if we're going to distribute the workload evenly, I think it makes sense for it to be an IGR. That said, it was staff that made the recommendations. Secretary Ringgold, do you have anything to add to that?
Chair Meyer, Commissioner Musich, it's work we're doing as an executive team right now to look at the actions that come forward and consider which committees they would go on. In fact, it wasn't the Admin Finance Committee we were considering as the alternative to this, it was the Planning Committee. But ultimately landed on the IGR Committee, looking at the way we're looking at IGR in general and how we're trying to expand it beyond just the state component of it, but looking at how it looks at the relationships with the city, with the county, with the school board, and other relationships. So that was the choice we made in this particular case in terms of recommending to which chair to look at this particular item.
Thank you for the clarification, both of you. I appreciate it. I have a question for staff now. We previously asked for funding. I had this up and now I don't know where it is. We had previously asked for funding at Phelps for the athletic field improvements and outdoor fitness equipment. We had asked for $300,000 last year. We were not awarded that full amount. And this project now twice has gone out for bid, and we've had to reject every bid because we can't get any bids that allow us to actually build anything there. So this park is one of the most diverse user bases in the poorest section of my district, and I'm wondering if it's possible for us to request the remaining funds that would be required to get that built out, even if it's just up to the $300 that we had initially asked for this year. I don't know if that's something that's possible, but I'm hopeful that it is, because I would really like to see the community around Phelps see the improvements that they have been involved in planning and have been asking for now since before I got elected to see built.
Chair Meyer, Commissioner Musich, in the past, we haven't gotten back on other projects, but if it's okay, it sounds like it, we'll reach out to the Minnesota Amateur Sports Commission before the next meeting, just to see if there's a reapplication, if that's possible. You're right, we only received, I think, 57,000 at Phelps out of a much larger ask. So I'll ask that question and report back to the board here on the 2nd.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Before I call on the other two commissioners, I had one other thought to add to the answer to your question, Commissioner Musich. Because now I'm connecting it to what you said at petitions and communications, and I'll just point out, like, you're highlighting, the chairs of color and women, but kind of erasing the only gay committee chair. So I think that would be a relevant thing to pay attention to if that's the kind of criteria you're going to use. Commissioner Severson.
Thank you, Chair Meyer, and I couldn't agree with you more. So I want to touch on what Commissioner Musich said as well. Phelps Park is a facility that I was really hoping to see on here with their field and their high use. I would encourage anybody on this board to go there at about 4 o'clock and see the high use on that field all day long, particularly if you look at it. I'm just throwing a guess out there, probably 90% black boys playing on that field, and it is packed all the time. So I think it would be a great initiative, and there are partners in that who also want to support that. It's not my district, but I'm extremely, hugely supportive of that, and I hope we can come to a resolution, and I would support Commissioner Musich on whatever needs to make that happen. The tennis, I just had a few questions. I apologize, step out and use the bathroom. I came back in at the tail end. The tennis courts outside of the tennis center, would them be covered over, or would them still be open for the public to access for free?
Phelps Tennis and Education Center is a nonprofit, so it's a public facility.
No, there's 2 tennis courts outside of the domed area. Are you folks talking about doming that over as well?
No, we are doming over our existing 2 courts.
Okay,
yeah.
So the courts outside will still be available for free for public use?
Actually, you're thinking of Intercity Tennis. We're a different facility. Intercity Tennis is located at 40th and Nicollet, and Martin Luther King Park, and we actually are a different facility.
We're
located
in the Fort Snelling.
in the Fort Snelling area.
Got
behind the
it,
Boy
got
Scout
it, got it.
graduation.
Okay, I apologize about that confusion. Well, I'm extremely excited that you folks are working on this. This has been something that, I mean, I'm going to be transparent. I like tennis. I played it myself. It is it's a great facility. So I would encourage this board. I fought to make sure that the north side had one. We only have 1 tennis court left in the lower end of North Minneapolis. And I understand that skate parks are important and we're trying to build, but I didn't want to lose this one asset. So this is a great opportunity and a partnership, and I hope that we could support this as we continue to build tennis, not just in Minneapolis, but hopefully on the north side as well.
Commissioner Forney.
Thank you, Chair Meyer. I'm not on this committee, so I appreciate being able to speak. I do like, the agenda of what's being teed up here. Sorry.
Served up.
Anyway, that I will particularly make a shout out for Painter Park with the Southwest Service Area Master Plan. There has been a huge community reach for dealing with the basketball court. So I'm very excited about that. And one of the things they did add is that they would love to, was it the tennis courts? They were also, anyway, the courts need to be dealt with, I guess is all I'm trying to say. And it sounds like, the multi-fields, hopefully we'll deal with all of it. As far as tennis, do you do any pickleball? at Fred G. Wells, isn't it? You don't do any pickleball? I would just encourage you to consider that, whatever. It's just been something that has been such a growing demand, and would appreciate, particularly if you're doming it over, that would be a real asset and everything. And I apologize, this change up of committees and everything, it's just, we wanted background on it, and yes, there has been a change up in a lot of things. How to make IGR, to make the legislative committee more relevant, as far as I'm concerned, it's probably the most relevant committee that we have, because it probably does bring in the lion's share of our budget. So I don't think that it's a non-relevant committee at all. But it's just to have explanation of why things are being moved out of committees where they have been traditionally been is helpful for us to know, to understand. I looked at the agenda, and I also was like, why is this happening? And I just wanted to give a little bit further understanding of where that's coming from, and I think that's all of my concerns. Very exciting agenda. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Forney. The City of Skate organization did reach out to me and requested that we consider applying to have the skate park at Elliott Park funded through this mechanism. It's right on the border with District 3, but my understanding is that it falls in District 4. So I guess it would be competing with the tennis center, but I'd like to consider that and to invite them to speak to it at the next meeting. With that, are there any other comments or discussion? Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.